Hey, Cowboys Nation, let's dive straight into the whirlwind that has been this season. Because if you've been watching, you know it's been a rough ride for America's team. Sunday night football came and went, and unfortunately, the result was another disappointment. The scoreboard read 34-26. And once again, it's clear that the Cowboys' defense is underperforming at a level that just cannot be ignored. We're talking about a defense that struggles with the basics, fails to adjust to in-game situations, and allows quarterbacks to have career nights against them. And yes, all signs point to one thing: Matt Eberflus cannot come back as defensive coordinator. It doesn't matter if the decision happens today, tomorrow, or at the end of the season. The trajectory of this defense under his leadership is simply unacceptable. Looking at the season as a whole, it's difficult to pinpoint anything consistent. The Cowboys have done well defensively. They continue to be late getting set, unable to manage simple motion plays, and consistently fail to defend the run correctly. There's also a pattern of playing individuals who are simply not performing at the necessary level, which again brings us back to coaching decisions. The early blitzes may show a spark of energy, but once a quota is hit, the aggression disappears, leaving the team predictable and exposed. In professional football, every defensive play matters, and the inability to sustain pressure or adjust tactics is a fundamental flaw. The coaching staff, particularly the defensive coordinator, bears the ultimate responsibility for these patterns. Now, I understand the hesitation to make mid-season changes. Stability is valued, and continuity is often seen as crucial. But holding onto a coordinator who has overseen one of the bottom defenses in the league for the sake of continuity is far more damaging. In fact, this approach has contributed to a revolving door of defensive coordinators, leaving players without a clear system and fans frustrated with yet another wasted season. While players are certainly accountable for errors on the field, the strategy and preparation put in place by the coaching staff set the stage for success or failure under Eberflus. The stage has consistently tilted against the Cowboys. Let's break down some of the numbers that illustrate just how poorly this defense has performed. Take J.J. McCarthy's performance, for instance. He had what could be described as the best game of his young career against Dallas. Not to overstate the individual achievement, but his output highlighted the deficiencies of the Cowboys' defensive schemes. Career highs in yards, total touchdowns, yards per attempt, and other advanced metrics point to a defense that failed to adapt, failed to bring pressure when needed, and ultimately failed to execute fundamental principles. When opposing quarterbacks can put up such impressive numbers, it is not a coincidence. It reflects coaching decisions and game planning. The defensive approach has been inconsistent, particularly in how pressure is applied. Blitzes are often called early, then abandoned as if there's a limit to how aggressive the team should be. This quota mentality leaves the defense predictable and allows opposing quarterbacks to exploit gaps at will, even in situations where pressure could disrupt the opponent's rhythm. The Cowboys fail to follow through, demonstrating a lack of strategic cohesion that cannot be attributed solely to player performance. Every aspect of these defensive failures ties back to the coordination and vision, or lack thereof, of the coaching staff. Another concerning factor is the deployment of players who clearly struggle to execute their roles effectively. Take Kenneth Murray, for example. His performance is emblematic of the larger defensive issues. He hesitates, guesses, and fails to stay in position, which compounds the defensive breakdowns. This is not only a player issue, it reflects a lack of proper preparation and adjustment by the coaching staff. The defensive schemes, which could have highlighted player strengths and mitigated weaknesses, instead exacerbate the problems. Instead of developing the defense into a unit capable of consistency, the strategies employed have allowed regression across the board, leaving the team exposed week after week. The overall results of the season provide the clearest justification for a change. The Cowboys have allowed opponents to achieve some of their highest scoring games against them, whether it's the Giants, Bears, Packers, Panthers, Broncos, Cardinals, Lions, or Vikings. 8 out of 13 opponents have had career or season best performances while facing Dallas, underscoring a recurring trend of defensive breakdowns. These are not isolated incidents. They are symptomatic of a system that consistently fails to prepare and adjust. As the season nears its conclusion, it is becoming increasingly evident that the defensive unit under Eberflus's leadership is on track to record historically poor numbers, both in points allowed per game and overall performance metrics. Beyond the statistics, There's a broader concern about the culture and mentality within the defense when a team regularly gives up big plays, struggles to maintain fundamentals, and relies on sporadic flashes of success rather than consistent execution. It erodes confidence and morale. This isn't merely about losing games. It's about the inability to compete at a professional level because the foundation, the coaching, and strategy is flawed. The decisions made by the defensive coordinator ripple through every layer of the team, influencing player development and game execution, and ultimately, the outcomes on the field. When examining the nuances of defensive play calling, there are patterns that cannot be ignored. Adjustments that could mitigate opponents' strengths are rarely implemented effectively. Pressure schemes are applied inconsistently, often yielding short-term success that quickly disappears. This failure to maintain an aggressive and adaptable defensive posture allows opposing teams to exploit weaknesses repeatedly, as evidenced by the high yards per play and touchdown rates of quarterbacks who face Dallas. Such outcomes are not merely unfortunate. They are predictable under the current defensive framework. Even casual observers can notice the regression across the defensive roster. Individual players who may have shown promise in previous seasons have struggled to improve or even maintain their performance levels. This points to a lack of development and effective coaching at all levels of the defense. Without proper guidance, players are left to guess, make reactive decisions, and often fail to execute simple assignments, creating a cycle of underperformance that undermines the team's competitiveness. The responsibility for this environment falls squarely on the shoulders of the defensive coordinator. As the Cowboys move toward the final stretch of the season, the urgency of addressing these issues cannot be overstated. While offensive performances may occasionally offset defensive shortcomings, football is ultimately a game of balance, and a defense that cannot consistently execute undermines every effort on the other side of the ball. The patterns of failure, the statistical evidence, and the observable regression of players all converge on one conclusion: change is necessary. Matt Eberflus's tenure as defensive coordinator has reached a point where continuation is untenable, and the need for a strategic reset is clear. As we keep breaking down this Dallas Cowboys defense, it becomes painfully obvious that the issues go far beyond just a few blown assignments or missed tackles. This is a systemic problem that traces directly back to the coaching staff and the lack of coherent strategy on the defensive side of the ball. Every game seems to reveal the same pattern: early blitzes that might generate initial success, followed by conservative play calling that completely removes the element of unpredictability. It's almost as if the defensive coordinator is working off a playbook that only functions in theory, not in practice. The execution is inconsistent, and the results have been catastrophic, leaving fans frustrated and players without confidence in the system they're asked to perform within. One of the more troubling aspects of this defense is the regression of the secondary. Throughout the season, it has become increasingly evident that the players are not being coached to their full potential. Instead of improving, key defensive backs have struggled with fundamentals like positioning, reading the quarterback, and reacting to motion. This is not merely a reflection of talent, it's a reflection of preparation, coaching, and the failure to adapt to opponents' tendencies. A good defensive coordinator finds ways to maximize the abilities of the roster, tailoring schemes to both the strengths and weaknesses of the personnel. Unfortunately, in Dallas, that does not seem to be happening. The failure to bring pressure consistently is another glaring issue. Blitzes are often dialed up in the first quarter, creating the illusion of aggression. But as soon as an arbitrary number of attempts is reached, the team retreats to a conservative shell. This approach leaves quarterbacks completely comfortable, allowing them to pick apart coverage, exploit gaps, and consistently convert key plays. The contrast between the rare moments when pressure is applied and the default passive approach highlights a lack of strategic thinking. That is unacceptable at this level of competition. Opponents are adjusting on the fly, and the Cowboys are reacting to slowly, if at all. To make meaningful changes, let's consider the big picture numbers again, because they tell a story that is hard to ignore. Through most of the season, the Cowboys have allowed multiple teams to achieve career-high performances. The sheer frequency with which opponents put up huge numbers against Dallas is not just a coincidence, it reflects a defense that is structurally broken. Teams like the Vikings and Packers have routinely found success against this unit. And while injuries and individual errors can explain some losses, they cannot explain systemic failures. The coaching decisions, or lack thereof, exacerbate these challenges and leave the team perpetually vulnerable. Another area that stands out is the lack of adaptability during games. When an opponent adjusts their strategy, whether through motion, shifts, or personnel changes, the Cowboys' defense has repeatedly failed to respond effectively. This is a hallmark of poor coordination and preparation. Defensive play calling should evolve within a game, especially when facing quarterbacks who can capitalize on every weakness. Instead, the Cowboys seem rigid, failing to recognize patterns or anticipate plays. And as a result, they continue to give up big gains and points. Fans and analysts alike have pointed out these trends, and the numbers back up what we've all been seeing on the field. Player deployment is another critical problem. Talented athletes are often put in positions where they cannot succeed. Instead of creating an environment where players can excel, the system seems designed to mask its own flaws with occasional pressure plays or sporadic defensive schemes. For example, certain linebackers and defensive backs who have the skill to perform at a high level are placed in roles that expose their weaknesses and limit their effectiveness. This mismanagement of personnel not only affects individual performance, but also disrupts team cohesion, leaving gaps in coverage and breakdowns across the defensive unit. It's also worth examining how predictable the defense has become in games where the Cowboys do not bring pressure. Opposing quarterbacks consistently find success when they do attempt to show aggression. It is often superficial pressure that is feigned rather than executed fully. This predictability allows offenses to game plan around the Cowboys' defensive tendencies, knowing that the threat of a blitz is minimal or inconsistent. At the professional level, unpredictability and adaptability are essential for a defense to be successful. And under the current leadership, the Cowboys are falling short in both areas. The cumulative effect of these issues has been devastating for the team. Not only are opponents achieving career or season-high numbers against Dallas, but the morale and confidence of the players are being eroded. A defense that is consistently exposed in this manner creates an uphill battle for the entire team. The offense may perform well, but without a competent defense, victories become far less likely, and playoff aspirations slip further out of reach. The responsibility for this state of affairs rests squarely on the defensive coordinator, whose strategies and adjustments or lack thereof have set the team up for repeated failure, even as the season progresses. There's little evidence that meaningful improvements are occurring. The trends in defensive performance, player regression, and failed adjustments suggest that systemic change is necessary. Bringing back a coordinator who has overseen one of the bottom defenses in the league would be a continuation of a strategy that has clearly failed. Fans and analysts alike have noted that the team cannot sustain this approach and expect different results. The data and observable patterns point toward the need for a new vision and a reset in defensive leadership. Before we roll on, subscribe to Cowboys Wire News. Drop a like and turn on the bell. Your support keeps the Dallas Cowboys updates coming. Tell us what you think in the comments. Whispers around the locker room have turned into full-blown speculation after CeeDee Lamb's recent outburst left Cowboys fans and NFL insiders buzzing. Sources close to the team say Lamb didn't hold back when addressing the team's struggles, and his candid comments have sparked a storm of rumors about internal friction within the franchise. While the Cowboys are no strangers to media scrutiny, the star wide receiver's remarks reportedly went further than typical post-game frustration. Multiple insiders suggest that Lamb directly criticized coaching decisions, hinting at a growing disconnect between the roster and the staff. He's been vocal about what he sees on the field, and he doesn't mince words, one source told us. There's tension, and players are starting to question some of the calls being made. The comments, though unofficial, are being interpreted as a sign that Lamb feels the team's strategy or lack thereof is holding them back. Rumors swirl that the veteran coach may be facing challenges keeping the locker room unified, with some suggesting that Lamb's fiery personality has become a catalyst for more open criticism from other players. Behind closed doors, sources claim the conversation is heated, and discussions about play calling and leadership have become regular points of contention. He's not just frustrated with a single game. He's frustrated with how things have been run for a while, another insider hinted. Social media has lit up with speculation as fans dissect every interview, every glance, and every cryptic comment from Lamb. While some defend the star's honesty, others argue that public criticism could signal trouble for the Cowboys' cohesion. Analysts and commentators are already weighing in, debating whether Lamb's candor will spark a long-needed shakeup or deepen the discord. Whether this is a temporary flare-up or the beginning of a larger storm, one thing is clear: CeeDee Lamb has made his voice heard, and the Cowboys organization may have some internal fires to put out. Rumors continue to swirl that meetings behind closed doors are tense, with coaching staff and players hashing out the future direction of the team for fans, insiders, and rivals alike. The drama surrounding Lamb's bold statement has become a story in itself, one that could shape the narrative of the season moving forward. That's a wrap from Cowboys Wire News. For breaking Cowboys updates, subscribe, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Tell us your take in the comments.